Hi, I'm Justin Boyd,
And I'm a tornado that took Ken away in the movie.
and we are the Watchers in the Basement. Welcome to the Watchers in the Basement. Today we are here to discuss, to celebrate the 10th anniversary of Man of Steel. That's right. Not only are we celebrating the 10th anniversary, but we're also here to talk about the movie because The Flash comes out this week, and in the Flash movie, Barry Allen goes back in time. He goes back to a 2013 that it's an alternate version of 2013 that includes Zod and Feora, two of the characters from this movie. However, there's no Superman. So anyway, interesting tie-in. The Flash will be returning to the scene of Man of Steel without the Man of Steel there. So, but don't worry about that. You'll get my review of the Flash next Monday. But today we're here to discuss Man of Steel. Let me give the little synopsis first. An alien child is evacuated from his dying world and sent to Earth to live among humans. His peace is threatened when other survivors of his home planet, Krypton, invade Earth. He assumes the role of mankind's protector as Superman and battles the maniacal Kryptonian General Zod in order to save mankind from annihilation in this supercharged reboot of the franchise. Okay, let's do some Man of Steel facts before I get Frank's thoughts on the movie. Man of Steel was released June 14th, 2013, which is literally, almost 2 days from hitting it, 10 years exactly. It was the first movie of the DC Extended Universe, also known as the DCEU. Had a box office of 668 million and a budget of 220 million, so it did pretty well. Runtime of 2 hours and 23 minutes. It feels like it. Directed by, of course, Zack Snyder. It's his second DC movie. He also did Watchmen, but it's his first movie in what is referred to now as the Snyderverse. He also did, of course, Batman v Superman, and then he also did Justice League, the Snyder cut version. The story of this movie was by David S. Goyer and Christopher Nolan. Never heard of him. Nolan was also a producer in this film. And the cast, of course, includes Henry Cavill, Amy Adams, Michael Shannon, Christopher Meloni, Antje Traue, Ayelet Zurer, Kevin Costner, Diane Lane, Laurence Fishburne, and Russell Crowe. Now, Frank, let's go back to 2013. Do you remember the first time you saw this movie? And what were your thoughts on the movie then? And have they changed 10 years later?
Yeah, I remember. So the first time I went to go see this movie was a midnight showing. It was a Thursday night in Pearland, and I was excited from the standpoint that I didn't watch the other Superman movies in the 20 teens, in the 2010s. I can't remember the guy's name that played them, but like I think Kevin Spacey
Brandon
was in it.
Routh. Yeah.
Yeah, Brandon Routh. So I didn't watch those. The last Superman movie I had seen prior to Man of Steel was Christopher Reeve's movies. And, like it's always gonna be nostalgic for me because of like it's Christopher Reeves. It was the
Yeah.
first like Superman cinema movie of its kind in the 70s going to the 80s. Like he is the iconic guy that I think of in my childhood as Superman. So I didn't have a lot of like expectations as far as like the acting chops because Superman, like the people who don the red cape, we don't look for the thespian nature of that character. We look for like the well, does the comic book version of stand out? Does the powers look good? Does the flying look good? The CGI, the
Yeah.
how does he look in the suit? Like it's more cosmetic with Superman than it is with a lot of other like acting roles that we see in Hollywood. But I gotta say, man, Henry Cavill, man, he knocked it out of the park. Like he was the first person and this is including like Kane from Superman Lois series too. He's the first Superman that I remember watching and saying to myself, "This motherfucker can act." Like I really believe he's Clark Kent. I really believe he's Superman. I really believe he's Kryptonian. There's a scene in the movie where towards the end where he's fighting Zod and like this in this building and like Zod's trying to take out this family with his laser beam eyes and like the screaming that he does before he snaps his neck and then like looking at his hands and like being so disgusted of himself. That was acting, bro. That was like Juilliard type shit. Like the amount of anguish and anger and regret. I was like, this motherfucker's really acting like he brought his toolbox with him, dog. Like I was so surprised by how good this movie was. So I wasn't at this point. I wasn't really expecting much. We had just finished the whole Batman series, Dark Knight, so I really had very low expectations. I thought the Dark Knight was really like an anomaly of just a great trilogy. So going into this movie, I had no expectations, and it shot out of the park for me. Like he to this day, he's my favorite Superman. To this day.
Wow. Yeah, as long as I've known you, you've always been a big fan of this movie, and conversely, I have not been a big fan. Superman's my favorite character. Let's just like you, I grew up with the Christopher Reeve movies and like Super Friends, the cartoon. I watched Lois and Clark on TV, and Smallville was huge for me. And I was way into this movie. I was way into Superman Returns, which came out in 2006, which we mentioned before had Brandon Routh as Superman, and that movie was kind of disappointing. And so when they were when I heard they were rebooting it, I was like, oh, that's a good thing. I need to see more Superman. Let's get Superman back. And this movie I was very excited about. Like you mentioned before, the Dark Knight trilogy just ended. That's like I said, Christopher Nolan was a part of this movie he helped with the story and he was a producer. And really, it sounds like what he did is he kind of helped Warner Brothers find Zack Snyder, and he really kind of set that up. And then he kind of got out of the way. But this movie, it was kind of going to be a grounded version of Superman, which is kind of a weird thing to say about a guy who flies and can shoots laser beams out of his eyes. And anyway, I was really looking forward to it, and it just I left the movie and I was kind of disappointed. I just like there's cool stuff I like, but there's a lot of things that like I don't know, it just doesn't feel like Superman. And those things, trust me, those things are still there. But over the years, like the last couple of years, I've watched this movie several times, and I kind of see that there's a lot of really good stuff in this movie. And one of the things about this movie that I didn't like initially that I think is excellent now is the opening 20 minutes is an opening. Well, it opens on Krypton, which, and it's this very like really like space sci-fi version of Krypton. And, you get, of course, Michael Shannon as Zod. And, more importantly, you get Russell Crowe as Jor-El, and you kind of see, baby Kal-El is born, and you kind of get the Genesis chamber and the Codex, and all these things are thrown at you. But it's a well done scene, or it's a well done like portion of the movie. And initially, I didn't like that because like I like Superman in the suit on Earth doing Superman kind of stuff. But looking back, it's like that part of the movie has really aged well for me. What's your take on the opening Krypton scenes?
I'm the opposite. I wish I got more of that. Cause like
Yeah.
most Superman movies, you don't if you get a quick snippet of Krypton, it looks very archaic. It looked very like a thing in the past. This is the first incarnation on the big screen of Krypton of how futuristic it looks, sci-fi, like you said, the uptick of technology on that planet. Um, I wanted more like flashbacks of that throughout the movie, to be honest, because it's a origin adjacent movie. So like it's kind of an origin film, but not really because you already get into it with him finding his powers at this point and just like be more in tune with his powers. But to see what his people look like, because we don't really have a big screen visual or reference to see what Krypton looked like, how the people acted, how how this beef between the scientists and like the politicians came about, and this destruction of Krypton. Like we hear it secondhand by Kal-El talking about it, or in cartoons with Brainiac, devouring planets or whatever. But seeing the visual of Krypton, man, I wanted more of that because it just looked cool. And like seeing Michael Shannon and Kevin Costner, like seeing them on Krypton and get more shots of that would have been super dope. Like in the comic books, so prior to Krypton imploding, the there was so much beef between the scientists, Jor-El, Jor-El's group, and the militants, Zod's group. And I would love to see like a prequel or just more of that, of how that came about to get a better understanding of why Kal-El the way he is and why Zod the way he is. I think it would have fed more to the story of just seeing instead of seeing more of just Superman flying in a field in Kansas or whatever. But
Yeah.
yeah.
There was a Krypton kind of series on Sci-Fi a couple years ago. It went 2 seasons. I didn't watch any of
I
it. I'm
didn't
not
like it.
sure. You
I
watched it?
didn't
Okay.
like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw the first season. It's so the guy is Superman's granddad. So it's not
Right.
even it's
Right.
Jor-El's dad. It's just I don't know. I mean, Brainiac's in it, and I guess because I was so unfamiliar with those characters, I didn't give a damn about them because
Yeah.
they're not people I really care about.
It's
Had it
maybe
been
too
a
far
Jor
back, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
far back, like, there's no like, in the comic book, there's no, like well, now I came across, no reference of Jor-El's dad. It's more about Jor-El, his
Yeah.
wife, and, like, in the beef between the 2 factions. That would've been more that would've hit more close to home because, I think with that, you get more of, like, a no writing like, oh man, that's Superman's pops right there. Oh, that's Superman's mom right there. Oh shit,
Mm.
Superman's uncle right there. Like it would have been more, it would have hit home more for me than like going back 2 generations.
Yeah. Well, like I said, the Krypton part has aged well for me. I think it's not my favorite part of this movie, but it's probably like the most bulletproof part. Like I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Like other stuff, there's holes to pick, and I've nitpicks for other parts of the movie, but I think that's a pretty strong portion of the movie. But my favorite thing, and this is even my favorite thing from back in 2013 when I first saw the movie, the score by Hans Zimmer, I think is perfect. You know, Superman, John Williams, who created so many iconic scores throughout the years, Star Wars and Jurassic Park and Jaws and all these things. Well, Superman was one of his also, and for Hans Zimmer to come along and I mean, his score is not as iconic because obviously the movies are not as iconic as the Christopher Reeve movies, but his score fits so perfectly. I listen to this score like all the time, just when I'm doing work or whatever. I just put it on the background. I think it's like such a great, there's just a great feeling, and you can kind of get the sense of the movie and just how it feels. It's Hans Zimmer. He's done a lot of great stuff. Also, he did the Dark Knight trilogy. He did the Amazing Spider-Man movies. He did Batman versus Superman. He did some of the Justice League stuff from Zack Snyder's version. So he's no stranger to these superhero movies. But I love the sound of this movie.
It just sounds majestic. It just
Yeah,
sounds like it sounds like almost like the dawning of a new era has arrived, right?
yeah,
Like in
yeah,
like the timing when Clark puts on that cape and he flies for the first time, and he when he confronts Zod for the first time, it's that music chimes in. It's just like, okay, not only is it dawn of a new era, this is gonna be the prince that takes us through the whole DCEU.
yeah,
This is gonna be our Iron Man adjacent for DCEU. Like they're donning him for the next 10 years. At least that's what we thought at the time.
right.
It is yeah, just majestic, man. Like him, I can't remember. Is it Silverstein for the Avengers?
Oh,
Silvestri?
Alan Silvestri, I think you gotta say. Yeah,
Yeah, John and Adam Silvestri, man, are two of the best in the business, man. Like when
yeah.
I hear the Avengers theme song, when I hear Superman's this score, it makes me want to go accomplish great things in life. It really does.
I got you. No, you're right. It is very like it's very like motivating. It's very like you kind of feel like maybe I could be Superman or something, even though that's ridiculous. But
Yeah.
it's such an awesome set. And really, honestly, I wonder, there's going to be a new Superman in a couple of years, James Gunn's Superman Legacy, and I really wonder what they're going to do with the music because James Gunn obviously is known for his needle drops with popular music. I wonder if they'll go back to John Williams or if they'll. I doubt they're going to use the Hans Zimmer music. They'll probably create something new, but man, it's gonna be hard to like top this one and to top the John Williams one. But that's a
I'm
topic
just
for
so
another day.
concerned, man. I look. I like James Gunn. I think he's. I love the Guardian series. I don't know if he has the bone in his body to like create something semi-serious when it
Yeah.
comes to somebody like Superman. 'Cause Superman's not funny. He's not a. There's no slapstick with Superman.
No, I mean
This is
you could. I think you could find humor in the world, but I don't think Superman needs to be a jokey. He's not Spider Man. He's not
no.
like he's not. He obviously not Deadpool. It's a different kind of character. So
Yeah.
yeah,
That's one of the concern with him being over the legacy this legacy project.
yeah. So we'll see how that is in a couple of years. But you mentioned you're talking about your overall thoughts. You're talking about how great Henry Cavill is. So let's get to the cast. There's a lot of great casting information. I think this cast is awesome, like top to bottom. And honestly, the casting of the whole like DCEU has been great, save for I think Lex Luthor. I think that casting was pretty bad, but every other character I think has been awesome. Let's talk about Henry Cavill a little bit. You talked about how like he's become your Superman, and I can understand that. There's a lot of interesting stuff about Cavill. He is the first non-American actor to play the character. But get this, he was cast to be Superman in a movie called Superman Flyby. I don't know if you remember that. It never happened, but it was a movie that
No.
was written by J.J. Abrams, and it was supposed to come out like around 2004, 2005. And several directors were on it, off it, like Brett Ratner and Mick G and some other people were a part of it. It fell through, and what ended up happening is Superman Flyby became Superman Returns, which Brandon Routh got the role, and Cavill was actually the backup. He was the second pick for Superman. So he was cast as Superman in Flyby in 2004. That movie doesn't happen. 2006, Superman Returns comes out with Brandon Routh starring as Superman. Cavill is the backup, and then obviously, then for Man of Steel comes along in 2013. He's cast as obviously as Clark Kent Kal-El for this movie, and the other people who are up for this role are very interesting. One of them was Tyler Hoechlin, who actually plays Superman on the Superman and Lois TV show right now. So, and he's obviously, I think he's a great Superman in his own right.
He is. He's good.
So he was one of the actors who's considered for the role. Also was Matthew Good, who was in Watchmen, Army Hammer, which I don't really see Army Hammer as Superman.
I see more as a Bruce Wayne.
Yeah, he was actually cast as Bruce Wayne in a movie that didn't come out. Obviously, it was Justice League Mortal. It was going to come out in 2009, but the writer's strike back then killed that movie. I mean, other things killed it too, but anyway. So Army Hammer was one of them. Jamie Doran was an actor who was considered for Superman. Joe Manganiello, who would later play Deathstroke in the DCEU.
I don't see him as Superman. He's too butch. He's too big.
Yeah, right. He could be Superman, but his Clark Kent would be kind of weird. Like he doesn't have like that. Superman has like kind of a friendly, like boyish kind of charm.
Yeah.
And I don't think Manganiello
too
has
intimidating.
Yeah. So that was pretty interesting about that. Also interesting about Cavill. He refused to take steroids to bulk up for Superman, and he underwent like a crazy diet routine where he to bulk up, he consumed 5,000 calories a day, and then to get lean, he cut down to 15,000 or 1,500 calories a day, in order to get that in that tremendous shape that he's in. Which is, I mean, that's a big part of it to me. The physicality of Superman is very important, and he delivered that. He looks like an action figure come to life, so that's a big part of Superman. So I'm wondering,
his body went through a lot of transformations over the years because he put on like 30 pounds for Mission Impossible, not Ghost Protocol, one of the Mission Impossible movies.
Right.
It was around the time he was shooting Justice League,
right.
and
The one where he cocks his fist or whatever.
Yeah, he had to put on weight for that too. So that's just, man, that's a lot.
Yeah. So so I think we both agree Henry Cavill is pretty awesome as Superman. I wish he could continue, but I mean, I think there's story reasons why it doesn't really work out. But let's go to Amy Adams. So Amy Adams played Lois Lane in this movie. What are your thoughts on her as the character Lois Lane?
Aesthetically, she doesn't really fit the profile of Lois Lane. Lois Lane is black hair, very pseudo sexy. Not saying Amy Adams is not attractive. I mean,
right.
But Amy Adams has this girl next door look. Doesn't scream like. I think the basis of Lois, she's domineering, aggressive, journalism reporter, very type A. I didn't get that from Amy Adams in this role. She was very, curious, but not type A, and very girl next door. She was good, but it didn't fit profile wise with what I see in the comic books or the cartoons.
Yeah, I can see that. I think she was better than the actress that played Lois in Superman Returns, which was Kate Bosworth. But I can see she's not iconic. You know what I mean? It doesn't like Cavill does feel like Superman, and she doesn't exactly feel like Lois.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just
missed.
Kind of a miss. Not. I mean, pretty close though. Not too far off. But what's interesting about Amy Adams is she, much like Cavill, she was considered for this role 3 separate times. She auditioned for that Superman flyby movie that never happened. Then she auditioned for Superman Returns, which Kate Bosworth got, and then she obviously was cast as Lois for Man of Steel. So her and Cavill, they kind of had the same pattern where they were going for these roles, all 3 times over 15-year process or whatever. So that's pretty crazy, I think. And also some of the people also considered for Lois were Kristen Stewart, Zoe Saldana, Olivia Wilde, and Mila Kunis. Do you think any of those actresses would be better than Amy Adams?
Maybe Mila. I like Mila Kunis.
Yeah.
She uh Olivia Wilde. I don't know about that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I like Mila. Olivia Wilde's so frail. She's so skinny. I don't know. It'll be hard to like see her as a Lois.
Yeah, I feel like if she were Lois, she would have like more of a comedic take, which I don't know that would be. I don't think that would be good. And I wouldn't be
Yeah,
a fan of that, honestly. So I think
me neither.
of those actresses, I think Amy Adams was the right choice. So anyway, moving on. Let's go to the villain, Michael Shannon as General Zod. I think he's awesome. What do you think about Michael Shannon?
There are a few times in superhero movies where like the character profile fits the actor perfectly. Robert Downey, Iron Man,
Yeah.
Ryan Reynolds, Deadpool, Henry Cavill. As far as villains, this motherfucker fits it perfectly. Like this guy's range as an actor is just incredible. Like I saw him a few years ago in Iceman, this biopic about this mobster.
Mhm.
Bro, the ferociousness he brought to that role was the same type of energy he brought to that Zod role. Like that motherfucker brought it. Shannon was on it. Great. I didn't know much of him prior to this role. But when I watched the movies, I'm like, oh yeah, that guy. Like I've seen him before, but like didn't put a name to the face.
Yeah.
But nah, man, he did a great job as Zod, man. Like I don't know what he did as far as what methods he did to channel that dictator type personality, but he aced that shit.
Yeah, in the Christopher Reeve movies, Zod was played by an actor named Terrence Stamp, and he was, of course, he was famous for saying, kneel before Zod. That was like his catchphrase in the movie. And I like how they didn't use that in this movie, but I think they had a better one. I like how whenever, obviously baby Kal-El escapes from Krypton, thanks to his mom, Laura, and whenever Zod looks at her, he's like, Laura, I will find him. I will find, he says it over and over. Like, it's like really powerful. And it's like, you really feel like he's going to find him. Like she's, it's like, maybe instead of sending these guys the Phantom Zone, let's just kill him right now because I feel like he's going to find that baby. Of course he does. 33 years later, he finds him. But really, honestly, everything he says in this movie feels epic. Like the one part where he's like, release the world engine. You're just like, yeah, whatever that is, release it. I mean, I know what it is, but like, it's just like, he's so good at playing this character, and he does offer a great physical character, like a physical representation of Zod to fight Henry Cavill's Superman. And I think while their fights are, and we'll get into that a little bit later, while their fights are very, they destroy a lot of stuff. Metropolis, Smallville, those places are pretty, they're in bad shape after this movie.
Correct. Yeah.
I think like, he matches up with Cavill's Superman very well. And those are some epic battles, in this movie, some good back and forth stuff. So as far as like casting what ifs, here's a couple of big names who apparently were considered for this role. Viggo Mortensen, who obviously famously Lord of the Rings, and Daniel Day-Lewis was also considered for Zod. Frank, I think they made the right choice, but what do you think about those two guys? I mean, those are both great actors.
I mean, hindsight 2020, they made the right choice. But if you would have given me Daniel Day, I ain't gonna be mad. I mean, that's you talking about acting chops, bro. Like every black person know who Daniel Day Lewis is. Like that's just he transcends race. Like he's that motherfucker that people know. Like I wouldn't have been mad if you said Daniel Day Lewis. He probably would have brought it too. But
he's very method. Yeah.
Very method.
He would think he was actually from Krypton. Like he would take it like to it, like off camera, he would like attack Cavill at the craft services table or something.
For the movie Lincoln, his wife was so pissed off because he he wore the Lincoln shit back to when he went home. He wore
Yeah.
the Lincoln shit. Like he was Lincoln for the 4 or 5 months they were shooting that bitch. Like
Yeah.
he don't fuck around. Like he's a method actor.
Yeah, that reminds me. Another method actor is Jeremy Strong, who of course played Kendall
Yeah.
Roy on Succession. There's a lot of stories about him, like where he takes his character too far. But I don't care. I don't have to live with these people. So like, as long as they put on great performances, I'm down with it. So do whatever it takes to bring these characters to our screens. But no, Michael Shannon was great in this character, and like I said, he's returning in the Flash. Zod will be back in the Flash, even though in this movie, spoiler alert, Superman snaps his neck. And we're going to talk more about that in a little bit. So, anyway, moving on through the cast, Kevin Costner. That's right. John Dutton himself played Jonathan Kent. And there's obviously a couple of big scenes we'll talk about with Jonathan Kent. But what did you think about Costner playing Superman's Earth Dad?
This is my one beef with the movie, bro. If I'm
Your
gonna
one
pay
beef? Okay.
if I'm gonna pay top dollar for an actor of his role, motherfucker, you're not gonna die in this movie. You're gonna be alive all throughout this bitch. Like, I'm not gonna kill you and have a hologram of you after that movie. Like, no, like I'm paying top. If I'm paying 25 million, I don't know how much you got to pay for the movie, but he's a man top rate. If I'm paying you $25 million for the movie, bitch, you're gonna be in the movie for the whole fucking time. I'm gonna get
Well,
my money's worth, dog.
Kevin Costner, I mean, spoilers for future movies, but he appears in BVS and in Zack Snyder's Justice League, like in dream sequences. No, he does. He really does. I mean,
No,
like
he
he,
does, but it's like, but my thing is, if you're gonna do that, get you a C plus actor or B minus actor. Don't get the cream of the crop of actors and then suspend them in the movie and shit and BVS and fucking holograms and all that kind of shit. You might
yeah,
as well just I don't know. It doesn't make sense.
yeah, I got you. I mean, I think I think he's like perfect casting for the role, but there's a lot of his things I don't like, and we'll get into those here in a little bit. Moving on, Diane Lane is Martha Kent. I think that's pretty good casting. What do you think?
Oh yeah, I love Diane Lane.
Yeah.
Diane Lane. I mean, Unfaithful is one of my favorite like MILF movies of all time. Like she'll always have a place in my heart. Diane Lane is on the MILF mountain of the top five of MILFs that I've ever seen in my life.
And that
Straight
movie
up.
was like 20 years ago. So like she wasn't
Oh
even
yeah.
that old back yeah. So
Oh yeah.
not that she's that old now, but anyway, moving on. Laurence Fishburne is Perry White. He's the first ever African American to play Perry White in a live action film or show. Um what'd you think about Laurence Fishburne in this movie? He's not in the movie a ton.
Again, like if I'm gonna bring in an actor of this ilk,
Yeah.
I'm gonna use him. Why would you bring this guy on to be in 3 scenes? It makes no
Yeah.
sense. Like, get you a C plus actor. It does. I don't like they wasted acting chops. Like they acquired all this talent and used them minimally in the movie.
He does appear in BVS also, though. I can't remember, but I don't think he's in. He might be in Justice League. I can't remember. He
He's in
probably is, honestly. Yeah.
he's in BVS for like 2 scenes maybe. Just
Yeah.
League, I think when she goes when Lois goes back to Metropolis to get
Mhm.
something, he shows up for like a quick
Okay.
scene.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like it's like why? I don't understand.
Because they paid him. So anyway, um, moving on. So Zod obviously he's a great Kryptonian foe, but also was Feora, his sub commander, played by Antje Traue. I think she's awesome in this movie. I think she's really great. But did you know, and this is incredible, that before Antje Traue accepted the role, Gal Gadot was offered the role, but declined because she was pregnant at the time. Of course, Gal Gadot would go on to play Wonder Woman, a much bigger role in the DCEU, and she obviously was in the sequel in Batman vs Superman. But she could have been Feora.
She
That's
better think
crazy.
she better think that birthday that she got that night and that timeline
Right.
made her more money.
Talk about a fortuitous pregnancy because that kept her, like timing is everything. But I do think the woman that plays Feora is great. I think she's
Oh,
super
she's good.
tough.
Oh
She's
yeah.
a great foe. Then you've got Namek, who is also who's like the 9 foot mutant, or he's like a mute version of he's Kryptonian. He's also really scary, and like those three are very formidable for Superman throughout this movie. So I think they did well with that. Moving on to Lady Laura Larvan, which of course is Kal-El's biological mother. She's played by an actress named Ayelet Zurer. She Connie Nielsen was actually in negotiations before Zurer was cast. Connie Nielsen also would go on to play Queen Hippolyta in Wonder Woman. So these Wonder Woman actresses, were almost, instead of being Wonder Woman people, they were going to be Superman people. So anyway, I think that's kind of interesting. She's not in the movie a ton, but what did you think about Laura?
I can't remember her face, but it was so quick because she died. Like they showed her like when she put the baby in the ship.
She's in the first 20 minutes for a little bit. Yeah.
I guess she was good. I don't remember. I don't remember. Like she's so insignificant in that movie. I don't really remember her role.
She's significant, but it's just she's only in the beginning. Like unlike Russell Crowe, he gets to be Space Dad or Space Ghost Dad or whatever through the rest of the movie.
Yeah.
She's only in the beginning whenever they send the rocket ship up and before Krypton explodes.
She wasn't bad. I don't remember her being bad. The way she plays that baby in that ship was perfect in that movie. She did a great job with that.
Perfect placement. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, perfect placement.
So next, the cast, we have Christopher Meloni as Colonel Nathan Hardy. This character has an interesting call sign. He calls himself Guardian when he's like in a plane or a helicopter. Guardian, of course, is a reference to another DC superhero, a DC character. What did you think about Christopher Meloni in this role?
Is that Martian Manhunter?
No. This is the guy that plays he's from like Law and Order SVU.
Oh.
He has some good lines. Like. Yeah, he says like
the guy that died, right?
Yeah, he dies. He makes a sacrifice. Yeah. He kills Feora. He has a great line where he's like, earlier in the movie, she tells him that a good death is its own reward. And then he flips it on her when he makes a sacrifice and they crash their plane into the Black Zero, which is Zod's, command ship or whatever.
Yeah. No, he was great too. He was great. I wish he survived a little bit longer in the movie because he had great one-liners in the movie for sure.
Yeah, he was solid. He's also like after they attack Superman with the other members in Smallville, the other Kryptonians, he goes, this man is not our enemy. And it's like, yeah, no shit, bud. Like he's been trying to save y'all the whole time. But shooting at him, like, I don't know why you can't figure this out, but yeah, he's not your enemy.
But I do like the aspect of how Man still displays and conveys the fact that man would destroy this planet. Like, and not only that, any threat or any ally that's as powerful or more powerful than them, they want to control. And they continually had they hit this and like executed it, it would have been a great 10-year arc story for DCEU. Going to Batman versus Superman with the whole, he's a Kryptonian, he's an alien, but if he goes rogue, what do we do? Like it's that whole like we can't control him type deal, and like they just missed the mark on that, man. It could have been a great story arc about how powerful he was and how they can't check him.
Yeah, and then they fast forwarded through so much stuff. They shouldn't have. After Man of Steel, they should have had another Superman movie instead of like jumping to Superman versus Batman versus Superman.
Yeah, they spelled the storyline for way too soon.
And then what happens in that movie? Obviously, Superman dies, which he's dying in the second movie. That's just ridiculous. And yeah, it's all crazy. Like, the fact that like Superman saves the world in Man of Steel, and then like 18 months later, the world has already turned against him, and Batman doesn't realize that he's like, a hero also. It's very, it's messy, but we're not gonna talk about that movie because that would be a 7-hour pod. Maybe someday in the future, but not today.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So moving on, rounding out the cast, let's talk about Russell Crowe as Jor-El. I think he's great. I think the opening scene where he's doing whatever it takes to obviously get his son, who his son is born Kal-El is a natural birth, which he's the first in thousands of years or whatever Kryptonians, because Krypton had this like you were
communism.
Well, kind of. Not like. They genetically engineered their population to you were either born to be a warrior or a worker or a leader or whatever. and they wanted their child to be free, and so not only free of the world that was imploding, but also free to make his own choices. So I thought that was a cool idea, and I think Russell Crowe, I mean, spoiler alert, he's a great actor, but I thought he nailed it in this movie.
Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna kill off a character and have him in animation suspension throughout the movie, he's the one actually that you keep alive in whatever form of fashion you possibly can because of the acting chops. Like you have, like he kills the role, and like even with like the one of the favorite my favorite scenes are the multiple scenes that he's beefing with Zod, like Shannon and Crowe, man, like them in the same scene together it was just great TV, great cinema work. Um, Perfect, man. Like it was perfect. Like, it's a perfect. The cast is like 97% perfect. Like
Yeah.
it's on point. Like you can't be mad. Like if I told you, hey, we should have moved in 6 months, we're gonna have Kevin Costner, we're gonna have Shannon and that motherfucker, we're gonna have Henry Cavill, we're gonna have Amy Adams, we're gonna have like Diane Lane. I'm like, oh, when's it come out? Can't wait to see it. Like it's a perfect cast. Like I
Yeah.
can't be mad at that.
Yeah. No, they did a good job. So Crow obviously landed the role, but also for consideration, Sean Penn was up for the role and Clive Owen. So, what do you think about those two actors maybe playing Jor-El?
I can see it. Clive maybe
Yeah,
because
I
because
could kind of
because
see
because of the
him.
accent. Yeah, I can see the
Yeah, and
accent.
he looks like he might be Superman's, father.
They look
Like
alike. Yeah.
similar. Yeah, yeah.
I s-
Sean Penn, I don't see it. Yeah,
yeah, I just think of Fast Time at Richmond High every time I see Sean Penn, man. I know it's been years, but it's just like I can't take Sean Penn serious in like serious
yeah,
roles.
yeah. So they made the right calls. So let's get through some other, like, I have some other kind of positive things. I think that the fight scenes are amazing. I've mentioned that. I think the visual style, I think the world looks great. Zack Snyder is so good at that. I mean, he makes his movies look cool. Like it's like visually stunning, everything he does. I think Superman's suit looks really cool. It's a different suit from obviously the Christopher Reeve stuff and from other TV shows and other movies. So I like that. I think the first flight scene when he learns to fly is very cool. Obviously, with Hans Zimmer's score going, and he's his dad's Jor-El's telling him what to do. Like you'll lead these people, and they'll stumble and they'll fall behind you, but you're gonna show them the light and everything like that. It's a really cool thing. Do you
I
have any other
love
things like you want to point out that you really enjoyed about the movie?
Yeah, I love how again how the movie stays so true to the personality of Clark or Kal-El,
Mhm.
how they show him the power of restraint. So like there's a scene where he's in a bar and like this bartender's being harassed, right? By this guy. And
Yeah,
like I think Clark is bar backing at this point in this bar, and
yeah,
he comes up, he approaches like, hey man, don't do that. And like the guy keeps fucking with him, and like, I think he spills beer on top of his head or whatever.
yeah. He does.
And Clark showed such great restraint. He walked off. I'm like, damn, bro, you're not gonna knock his ass out. But again, he's Superman. Like he'll fucking displace his jaw and put it in Iceland or whatever. So, he the guy walks out to drive away, and his truck is wrapped around the goddamn telephone pole. The telephone pole is wrapped around the truck. Like
Yeah.
it's. I was like, okay, that's Clark. That's Superman in a nutshell. A guy that he doesn't always fight the fight because he knows he's going to win. And I love that scene so much.
See, I feel the opposite about that scene. That scene,
Why?
but that's okay. That scene is one of the most ridiculous scenes ever put on film because the truck driver, who's like, he throws the beer in his face, pours part of it on his head. That dude is a foot shorter than Henry Cavill. Henry Cavill has about 80 to 100 pounds of pure muscle on this guy. Like the fact that this guy could think anywhere in his mind that he could like take, like, regardless if he has superpowers or not, like if Henry Cavill and this guy fought in a fight, not only would this guy get his ass kicked, he'd probably die. Like, I mean, like,
But
seriously,
that's
the
the whole point.
comparison.
That's the whole point. If he fights him, he dies.
No, 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 no. I'm saying like without powers, that guy would die. Like if like you'd be insane to go challenge this guy to a fight. Like if you're that trucker guy, you wouldn't go up to Henry Cavill and do that because like that
No,
guy
I
would
wouldn't.
he'd pound your. I mean, he'd kill you. Like it'd be over. Like
But
so.
he was also a drunk though, Justin.
I know he's drunk, but like I feel like it's just like
You
it's a
said
scene.
yourself sober that you'll fight Mike Tyson for $1 million. And you were sober when you said
I
that
would take a
shit.
punch for $1 million. I'd take a punch. I would take one punch. It'd be worth it. It'd be worth it.
That's,
One punch.
that's some drunk man
If
shit.
if I survive, it's totally worth it. No, we'll talk about this some other time, but I would do that 10 times out of 10. I would do that. No, but the thing about this scene that I don't like is,
Uh,
so you're right. Clark just takes it, right? Because
yeah,
he knows he could hurt this guy. I mean, I could hurt this guy, but he knows he could hurt this guy, right? But he doesn't do it. The guy
yeah,
pours the beer, throws the can at him, and he's like, "Here's your tip, asshole." But then, like afterwards, like you said, Clark, he drives an 18-wheeler. Clark destroys his truck and has like all these like telephone poles or
logs and shit.
branches. Yeah,
Yeah,
like, and it's like Superman wouldn't do that. Like, because like obviously also like somebody could see you doing that. Like it's such a like that's more of like a Spider-Man thing. Like I don't think and to me, like in that scene, the guy like initially before the guy pours the beer on him,
yeah,
the guy like tries to like punch at him or he shoves his chest and the guy gets hurt just doing that. So
yeah.
like to me, it would have been better if like like there's actually a book about the movie. I read the book for the podcast, and in the book, the guy is like he's a regular at this bar, and the bar owner thinks that Clark starts the fight, and he fires him, and then the guy pours the beer on him, and Clark leaves anyway. And to me, that works better than what they did in the movie. Now, in the book, he also does destroy the truck, which I don't. Well, thanks, Brittany. Thanks for that. Yes, I can read.
Producer extraordinary Brittany with the head with the
Right.
breaking news.
Jesus, that is so hurtful. True though, but I can read. That's true. But anyway, that scene to me, like that scene that should have been a cut. It should have been cut because this movie is 2 hours and 23 minutes. It's way too long. Like I would just cut that scene because it really doesn't serve any purpose. Like, because we see like Clark take crap from people like as he's a kid, and it just keeps on going throughout his life. Then like him tearing up the truck really just doesn't work. Like I wish they could just cut that scene because it just to me it just gets in the way. Like
But I
it's
think him tearing up the truck because the differences between him being picked on as a kid and him
yeah,
at that point of his life is that when he was a kid, he had no control of his powers. So he was even afraid to even like fight back because his powers were so erratic at the time.
right. But he was
Um,
strong as a kid and he knew he was strong.
yeah, but as a kid, man,
Right.
as a kid, you don't. That's my point. You know how strong
Yeah.
you are. You fucking push a kid in the chest. All of a sudden, your hands through the kid's chest cavity. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying?
Right.
I think that scene kind of showed that I have control of my powers. And not only that, but I have control of my emotions because I know I can kill this guy. But I don't. But I'm not going to be that guy based on what my dad told me to do. My Earth dad told me to do of like
Yeah.
you know fighting the good fight when it matters and not for my ego. I think that's what the scene was trying to portray of
Yeah.
him walking away. And like again, because now he's somewhat human because he's grown up on this planet, and I think the after effects of like his human emotions getting to him is him fucking up the truck.
Yeah. I just think it works better like if the guy punches Clark and breaks his hand and realizes like this guy is like legit, like he would kill me, but also he's made of steel. Not that the guy's gonna know he's Superman, but like to me, the guy breaks his hand, realizes like that was dumb,
Hmm.
and then the Clark gets fired because the guy's a regular, and then Clark leaves because Clark leaves anyway. Like
Hmm.
to me, that would work better for the movie because to me, messing up the truck is not a Superman thing he would do. And there's other stuff in this movie where he does that I don't think Superman would do that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
Um, okay, so let's get to
We
so
spent like 10 minutes on the truck scene.
I know. I mean, to me, it is a ridiculous scene because the guy, like, there's nowhere in the world would that guy want to fight Henry Cavill. Like, he would
No.
just get destroyed. I mean, it'd
Yeah.
be brutal. It'd be a
Yeah.
brutal scene. Um, yes, and kind of following up on like the scene that Kevin Costner has, as Jonathan Kent, where he talks about he's talking to his son about his kids are picking on him and he doesn't fight back, and he says, like Jonathan Kent comes up to Clark and he's like, did they hurt you? And he's like, Clark's like, they can't do that. He's like, no, you know what I mean? Like, are your feelings okay? And he's like, Dad, I wanted to punch that guy so bad. And Kevin Costner's like, yeah, I wish, I kind of wish you would have, but then what would have happened? Like that was a really great scene for Jonathan Kent.
Yeah. No, I mean, if I had that in my life, I probably would have been and fought less half the time than because when you're a kid, you just fight. You fight for no reason. Sometimes you just fight because you just want to fight, or you
Yeah.
fight because somebody
Yeah.
looked at you the wrong way. Having that parental advisement of like, hey, like you could do this, but what are the repercussions after?
Mhm.
What are the consequences of you doing this? What is the domino effects of you punching that kid in the jaw or you get in trouble? And I just love that fatherly aspect of because you get more of it in this movie than you do in any other Superman movies or cartoons
Yeah.
of that because like a lot of the Superman movies and cartoons you get more of the Martha Clark connection than you do the Jonathan Clark connection. So I thought it was really cool
Yeah.
from the movie.
Because Jonathan, he dies almost in
Every
most
single
versions of
incarnation.
Superman. Yeah,
Yeah,
there's some comics where he survives, but most of the part he dies. And
yeah,
I think this is probably a good transition. Let's talk about how Jonathan Kent dies in this movie. It's my least favorite part of the movie. I think it's one of the dumbest scenes in the history of cinema. So to kind of set it up, you know, for Clark's whole life, Paul Kent, Jonathan Kent, his belief is that Clark is supposed to hide who he is from the world until he's ready to reveal himself because he's afraid he's going to get discovered and people are going to want to study him or take him or whatever. And so he's constantly telling his son to not help. However, throughout the movie, you see he's even as a kid, like Clark saves that school bus full of children. Like the school bus goes into the river. Clark rescues everybody, even though like the kids I mean, honestly, he probably should have let them all drown because like the way they treat him. But
Damn.
like he saves everybody. So we see that he has this like goodness in him. It's innate
Yeah,
goodness like throughout him. And even that scene, like, Paul Kent afterwards, he's talking to him. He's like, what was I supposed to do, Dad? Just let him die? And Paul Kent's response is maybe. And it's like, maybe? Like, are you raising the kid
yeah.
from Brightburn or Homelander, or are you raising Clark Kent? Like it's like what do you want him to become?
It
Because
did make sense.
no,
Yeah,
because he wants him to like wait until he's ready to reveal himself, but then it's like he's always been saving people, helping people, which leads me to when Paul Kent dies, he dies in a tornado. They're driving down the highway. Clark and Jonathan are like having a little bit of an argument. Or Clark is saying like he has, he wants to do something else in his life. He wants to do bigger things, to be a farmer. And obviously the Kents they've been farmers for 5 generations. And then Clark throws it in Jonathan's face that, hey, well, I'm not part of your family. Y'all just found me in a field, which Clark instantly regrets saying that because it hurts his dad's feelings. But anyway, they stop because there's this massive twister that's coming. They're in Kansas, so that's like Tornado Alley, and they're all these cars are stopped on the interstate, and they get out and they're trying to like figure out what to do. They all decide to hide under the underpass or the overpass, which is not the safest place. But I think back when this happened, I think that was like still considered like a reasonable thing to do, like to hide under an overpass during a tornado. And so they're hiding. They go, Martha's with them, but they forget their dog in the car. And so Jonathan goes back to get the dog, which Clark should have gone back. He wanted to, but Jonathan wouldn't let him. And of course, like Jonathan gets stuck in the car. He frees the dog, but he's stuck in the car. Then he gets out of the car as the tornado is bearing down. Clark can clearly save him if he wanted to. And Jonathan just puts out his hand and goes, no, don't do that. And then he dies in a tornado. Frank, your thoughts?
I said in our group chat earlier today. I was like, man, I think he wanted to die because he was unhappy in his marriage. He was trying to find an out in his divorce, and divorce would have cost too much. He's like, fuck it, I'm gonna exchange the divorce for my life. That's the only way it makes sense. Like using a loveless fucking marriage, and like you didn't want to be alive anymore. Because there's no way, common sense wise, you can tell me that if I'm a child with superhuman powers and I can save my fucking parent, and my parent puts up the hand and says, "No, you think I'm gonna listen to that motherfucker? No, bitch, you getting saved. What the fuck? Like, I don't care who sees it. And plus, he has super speed, so like he can fly in and fly out, and nobody witness it or see it
And
at that
also,
point.
it's in a tornado. If there's ever a time to use your powers when people probably wouldn't even notice it, it's right then and there.
Exactly,
It's
exactly. And guess what? If they did see it, you threaten them like, bitch, I'll snap your fucking neck.
Well, the thing
Fuck it.
is everybody already knows he's Superman, or everybody knows that Clark has special powers from as a kid. Everyone knows, and then later on in the movie, everyone knows he's Superman. Basically,
Just want a secrecy.
that's one of the biggest problems with this movie is the secret identity issue. Which secret identity is obviously a big part of the Superman lore. And I mean, Lois finds out right away. She finds out he has powers before she learns his name is Clark. Like she doesn't like she knows he has powers. She because he saves her on the
Mhm.
ship when they're in Canada in the ice. So like they skipped over the secret identity, but then later on they tried to, give him that Clark Kent when he goes to the Daily Planet. But it's like at that point,
Glasses.
everybody in Smallville knows who he is. Like, when Zod and his crew show up to Martha's house and destroy the house, like, don't you think people are going to put two and two together? Like, why did they go to Clark's? Like, why did they go to the Kent household of all the houses to attack? Like it's just a logic that really messes with the movie. And his dad's whole thing of like, well, you can't reveal who you are until you're ready. And it's like, well, he's shown he's been ready for a long time, or at least like to save people and help people. He's shown that his much of his life. Like, I feel like it's one of those things where it's like Superman doesn't become Superman like until he's like college age or so, or out of college. Like that's just kind of like the story of Superman in the comics and the shows. And so I feel like they were kind of like they put themselves in that corner because they made other changes to the Superman lore, but this one like they thought, oh, we're not going to do the secret identity, but then we also are later on when everyone kind of knows. It just doesn't. To me, it just doesn't work.
I just feel like they try to force the whole. There's a formula to all the superheroes. Some type of death, some type of like
Yeah.
distraughtness of
What
loss.
spurs them on? Yeah.
What spurs on to be a hero? And I'm kind of like, well, when you watch the movie, he's already been spurred on to be a hero from the time he was a child. He
Yeah.
was told he was special. He was told and kind of semi under the tutelage of his father that hey, you know, you're gonna do great things, but you gotta decide whether you wanna be this or not. So he kind of knew this from the time he was a kid. So to like recklessly just kill the father off just for the sake of having this like this system of like, okay, what spurs him on? You already had the reason for him to be a hero in the first fucking place. There's no point of killing off Kevin Costner in this film. And who knows? The film might have been even way better with him alive, of him being there and just like dealing with the whole Zod shit and like protecting his son or like, you know, whatever. Like it didn't make sense to me. It was very odd. I don't know if they only could afford Kevin Costner for maybe a third of the movie. Who knows? But for the fact that you did that, just it was just a pointless death for a story that could have been so much better with him being alive in it.
Yeah, no, I think it was a story choice. And that's the problem is it really kind of it just doesn't work. To me, it doesn't work. And like I said, in all other versions of Superman stories, Jonathan Kent dies, and usually he dies of a heart attack. And the reason why he dies of like a heart attack is because that's something that Superman can't save him from, right?
Yeah.
His dad dies of a massive heart attack, and there's nothing he can really do. Yeah, he could super speed him to the hospital, but like he's not gonna make it. You know what I mean? Like, so that's why I feel like in this movie, you either do the heart attack or if you're going to kill Jonathan Kent, maybe he dies in a car wreck or he has some kind of accident
Yeah.
that Clark wasn't there for or can't save him because that's just a big part of it. And Jonathan Kent in other versions of Superman, he's like, yes, he wants Clark to kind of hide himself, but he also understands that he has this great gift and he can help people and save people. And like, it's more balanced. Whereas this version of Jonathan Kent is so against him doing anything until the time is right. And it's like, but like, and so what the story tells you, what it kind of tells us is that he determines that the right time to display his powers and become Superman is once his dad dies. Like it takes his dad's death to, force him to become Superman or make him, journey to figure out who he really is. And I mean, on paper, that doesn't sound bad, but then the way it plays out, it's not good.
And to even pile on that even more, like not only had Jonathan Kent like in his ear as a child, the ship, his space father, his actual
Yeah.
father,
Yeah.
told him his legacy and who he is and what the symbol means and all of this. So like you had all this research and homework and like rah rah guys behind you to be this destined hero, which even makes death even more stupid. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like you were sent there to be Earth's guardian. That was your destiny. That's what the S in on the chest stands for in this movie.
Well, it's hope.
So
It stands for hope.
well,
But yeah,
hope,
I got you.
well,
Yeah. I mean,
hope.
he was, yeah.
But he was sent to be like I think uh Jor-El said like you will be this earth's guardian, or earth's savior, or whatever he said. But paraphrased. It was to the effect of like, you are going to be the hero of this world, and you are going to do great things. So he was predestined to be this, even though he was Krypton's first natural birth, thousands of years. In
Yeah.
some form or fashion, he was still predestined to be a hero for this planet that will become his home.
Well, I mean, he's because of like his body makeup, like it's basically because of the sun, like the Earth's
Yeah.
sun, the yellow sun gives him the powers. Like that's why they're Kryptonians, they have powers too once they kind
Mm.
of get acclimated. It's basically their body, they're just built different.
Yeah.
So that's how they become, super powered and they can fly and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's just like I don't know, there's a lot of good stuff in this movie, but they missed on a couple of things that are kind of really key things to me, like as far as like telling a Superman story and using Superman as your jumping off point for your universe. Like, I mean, he's the character you should start it with, but
Yeah.
I just feel like it should have been better. And like I said, there's still a lot of great stuff in this movie, stuff that I really enjoy, but it's kind of a weird mix.
Yeah.
Let's get to one little funny comment I wanted to make or tell you before you leave, Frank, is
Okay.
on the bus before the kids go in the river. Pete Ross, who's like a bully, he refers to Clark as a dick splash, which I've never heard anyone say that to another person. And I'm just like, dick splash. Like that's such a weird put down. Like I,
Sounds
I
like a
don't
compliment to me.
I know. It's like what are you saying? Like
I don't
anyway,
mean. I mean, if my
anyway.
my if my appendage is getting wet constantly, that means I'm putting in work. I don't know what the problem is. I don't understand.
It's such a and it's funny because when he says it, he's like dick splash, and then like the tire blows out and they go right into the river. Like it's really funny moment in a movie that doesn't have a lot of humor, but
Yeah.
just an odd scene. Um, is there anything else from this movie you want to mention before you get out of here?
Um. Man, the fight scenes, man, the fight scenes were incredible. Like, I think you touched on it a little bit earlier in this podcast, but it's just like going through buildings, destroying cities, like, and again, if they did this right, it would have been a great jumping off point for down the line for Batman versus Superman, because that was kind of the premise of how things. One Batman's homies got killed, or like people that he knew got killed in Metropolis, and it's kind of like, well, you you kind of sour those series of fights in Man of Steel to only fuck it off in Batman vs Superman. But
Right.
it was great. I mean, even the final showdown, and when in that building, when Zod's trying to kill those people, that family, it's just like down to the last fiber of like them fighting. Like it just ends in grand fashion. It started in grand fashion. I held my breath all throughout, and it ended in grand fashion. And shout out to them, man. If I do see Flash, it'll be because of Shannon. Like that Zod, he really makes that movie for me, man. Like that was a great presentation of Zod in that movie.
Yeah, yeah. And just real quick, do you think like he should have snapped his neck? Because like Superman doesn't typically kill. I mean, he shouldn't kill, obviously, but
Hmm.
in this situation, he was kind of put in a tough scenario where it was like either he kills Zod or Zod kills these people who are there. Never mind the fact that they both killed a ton of people fighting throughout the city,
Yeah, I
knocking
think.
over buildings and everything. Yeah,
Yeah, like now there have been times Superman has went ham, like
yeah,
when
right, right.
when Dark Side in the comic books, a couple other major characters he went ham on trying to kill.
Yeah,
I think if Superman is put in a place to kill, it's in the benefit of saving somebody, saving people,
yeah,
saving
right.
innocent lives. So
Yeah.
I had no problem with how he did it, um, but it had to be like people's lives in the balance, and so I had no issues with it.
Yeah, I feel like there's sometimes there's a time to kill for these superheroes, and I feel like he
Yeah,
was kind of put in that scenario to. I mean, Zod says like, really, the only way this is going to end is either you die or I die, and
yeah,
he basically tells Clark like, I don't think you have it in you to kill me, and then Clark has to, or Superman has to do that. So
and to solidify it too, like the anguish Clark felt afterwards.
yeah,
Now it's one, like, you totally miss Superman and the fiber of who he is as a being. If he snaps his neck and he's like, Cool. That motherfucker gone. Oh, all right. We good.
Yeah,
Like that would have killed the whole essence of who Clark is. But because he felt so much anguish after snapping
yeah,
his neck, and he screams, and he's like, not only did I just kill my adversary, I killed one of the last sons of Krypton.
yeah.
That's what that scream was really all about.
I
Like,
mean, the
I killed
last
my
other person from his planet besides himself. Yeah,
yeah, because Frederick's already she's gone, she's dead.
right, right.
His parents are dead. So that scream that he did, it was so perfect because like I eliminated one of the last of my kind. What
Yeah,
the fuck? And I it,
yeah.
it was it was perfect.
And speaking of that, last thing I'll tell you, don't you think that this movie should have been called Last Son of Krypton?
It should have been.
It's a better
That's
title for the movie because then you could have done Man of Steel as the second movie or whatever later
yeah,
on, because it's mostly about that storyline of him being the last son of Krypton and him coming to this new world and trying to obviously keep them from recreating Krypton on Earth. So I feel like that would have been a better title for the movie. But Man of Steel sounds better. It's shorter. I
yeah.
get why they went with that, but
No,
there's a
for
better
sure.
title out there. Yeah.
Yeah, man. Man, thanks so much for having the pod, bro.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Yeah,
Thanks
man.
for jumping on, and yeah, we'll talk about other stuff later on. So thanks again, Frank.
Yes, sir.
So Frank had to leave, but I've got a lot to say about this movie because I watched this movie a couple of times the last couple of days. As Brittany pointed out and made fun of me, I read the movie novelization for this film. Um, and by the way, the book is a little bit better, and the book does flesh out a lot of stuff in this movie that no, thanks, Brittany. I appreciate it. I'm glad you're proud of me. Everyone should be proud of me for reading because reading is fundamental, as I learned as a kid. Um, but no, the book really fleshes out a lot of things. The main thing the book does better than the movie is, as Frank and I were just talking about, there's a lot of destruction in this movie, and some people call it like destruction porn because you have Smallville. You know, Clark's home is leveled when the Kryptonians, Feora and Zod and Namek, whenever they show up there, Main Street Smallville is just leveled, just destroyed. I mean, it's obviously not a very big place, but it's wrecked, right? And then we go to the Battle of Metropolis at the end of the movie, and I mean that it's like 10 9/11s or something. The whole city is in ruin, and just I mean, there are whole like blocks of skyscrapers that are just knocked down as these superpowered beings are fighting. And one of the big criticisms about this movie is the fact that Superman doesn't in the movie he doesn't seem to care about the loss of civilian lives. And you know, when you watch it, you don't really see much of that. There's some of that, but that he doesn't feel like he's thinking about that. Whereas like Superman in the comics and in shows, he's very concerned with trying to save people. That's a big part of what he does. And in the film, you just see the action, right? And there's one scene that I think is really like it's kind of it's a bad look for Superman. There's a scene where when it's down to just him and Zod tosses a oil tanker at Superman, and it's actually a LexCorp, which LexCorp is one of the Easter eggs you see a couple times in the movie. He tosses a tanker at Superman. And instead of stopping it, Superman just kind of skips and floats over it, and that tanker crashes into a parking garage behind him, and it just explodes. Like the parking garage is destroyed, and Superman just kind of like, you know, gracefully like hopped over it. Like he should have stopped that. Like that's not something Superman would stop that. He wouldn't because he wouldn't want it to blow up, you know, Metropolis or any place. He'd want to save people, save lives, and obviously all the damage to the city. So like that's one of the criticisms for the movie from a lot of people is the fact that it's like just disaster porn. Things are being blown up left and right. There doesn't seem to be a whole lot of concern from Superman. Whereas in the book, he is more concerned with lives. Like as he's being thrown into buildings and stuff, he's thinking about he's looking and seeing like, are there people here? Oh, it's good that this person left. I don't see anybody on this floor. He's more, you know, he's more in tune to that and he's thinking about that, which I think is a good thing because that's what Superman would do. Superman would try to save people. But having said that, like, you know, it's not like Superman chose Metropolis as the battleground. Like the Kryptonians, they took it. I mean, they tried to. That's where they were invading. That's where they're trying to take over. That's where they're trying to, you know, terraform and recreate Krypton. And they chose Metropolis as their, you know, new kind of city or home base. So obviously they brought the fight to him, and he obviously was outnumbered. He had to fight many of those uh, super beings, but yeah, I feel like he should, as Superman, he would have more concern for human life, and that's part of why people have a problem with the end whenever he snaps Zod's neck, because they fall into this metropolis Grand Station, which is like Grand Central Station in New York, and there's people all around, and Zod's like last move is to laser eye, with a heat vision, like burn these people in front of Superman. And it's just like it's this family of four, and they're just kind of standing there, and the laser beams are going across, and like they could move, but of course they just stand there because it's a movie. And Superman tells him, no, don't do that. And of course, Zod continues, and Superman has no choice but to snap his neck. And when he snaps his neck, I didn't even notice this when I first saw the movie, but someone on IMDb pointed out that when Superman snapped the neck, he actually snapped Zod's neck to where his eyes would actually go toward, where the laser beams are going to end up hitting the family. But then if you watch the movie, the second he snaps the neck, the eyes go out. So like there are no laser beams potentially that would hit these people also. But it is, I do understand the criticism by people of saying, like, why does Superman all of a sudden care about these four random people when thousands of people in Metropolis have just died in this battle, and they've died all around him. And it's a movie. That's one of those things where it's a movie. There's no real way to like get around that. That's movie kind of stuff. And I think that like I said, I don't have a huge problem with him snapping the neck, but because I do believe like in certain scenarios there is a time to kill. I mean, if you think about like Batman also doesn't kill. Batman doesn't use guns. Although in all the movies, Batman is using a gun, whether it be on the Batwing or the Batmobile, or even hand to hand in some of the Snyderverse movies. Um, you think about like if Batman just killed the Joker, wouldn't that save him? I mean, it would save a lot of people's lives. It would save him a lot of trouble of having to constantly, put this guy in Arkham over and over and over. Um, so I can kind of see, both sides to it, but overall, the heroes that we love shouldn't kill. But in this scenario, Superman really didn't have much of a choice. So I get it. It's okay. And also, like Frank said, like Superman, like when after he snaps the neck, he drops to his knees. He like groans in like pain because he just killed the last member of his race besides himself. So, or that we know of, there might be somebody else out there. Maybe Supergirl, because Supergirl is going to be in the Flash that comes out this week, and I will be seeing that movie several times this week, and I'll have a review for you next week. But let's continue on as we go through Man of Steel. There's lots of stuff that I like about this movie. The end of the movie, I think, is a really great scene where, I mean, we're talking about the very last scene where Clark tells Martha, his mother, that, she asks him, she's like, what are you going to do now that, when you're not saving the world, what are you going to do? And he's like, well, Mom, I'm going to need to get a job. And it shows him like, he's putting on the glasses and putting on a sport coat, and he's riding his bicycle to work. And he's like, I need to find a job where I can go places where I can ask questions, where people won't like I'm going to put myself in dangerous situations. I'm going to become a reporter for the Daily Planet. That way I can be, my ear to the ground. I'll know what's going on. And so he shows up at the Daily Planet, and he goes up to, he's up there, and Perry White introduces him to everybody. Of course, Lois knows who he is, and Lois hits him with the line, welcome to the planet, which obviously welcome to the, he's an alien, welcome to the planet Earth, but also welcome to the Daily Planet. It's kind of a double entendre. And then he's like, glad to be here, Lois. And that's like the perfect way for the movie to end. Then the Man of Steel thing drops and the music crescendos. Like, it's a really great ending. But in that scene, like just seconds before that, there's a character, Lombard, who is, he's pretty well known in the Superman comics lore. He's usually like a former jock he's like a sports writer. He's on the sports desk at the Daily Planet, and he's always like hitting on women. Like, he's in this scene before Clark shows up. He's trying to get Lois to go to like a basketball game. He says he's got courtside seats, and he's trying to like get an intern to go with him. And it's like, you have courtside seats to a basketball game in Metropolis. Like Metropolis has been leveled. Like what's the time period? Is this years after the Battle of Metropolis? Is this like, you know, I mean, it's got to be many, many months later because I mean the whole city's a wreck. So I thought that was always kind of funny where he's like trying to like, I've got courtside seats. It's like courtside seats to what? Like to the end of the world? Because like, I mean, the whole city is in ruins. So that's kind of a silly moment in a really good scene that I think is it's kind of one of the problems with this movie. Like I was talking about earlier about how I think one of the things about this movie is the runtime. It feels too long. And there are scenes that can absolutely be cut. And I think you could shave off about 20 minutes and make this a tighter, leaner movie. And you cut out a lot of stuff that I think just doesn't work for Superman. As I said before, the bar scene, I just does not work for me. It doesn't like why would Superman do that kind of stuff? Another scene I really don't like is the church stuff. I mean, spoiler alert, I'm not a religious person, but I just think it doesn't make any sense for, Clark goes to see a pastor at a church in Metropolis and he's looking for someone to give him some advice because Zod has come to Earth and he's basically wanting Kal-El to turn himself in and he gives him like a 24-hour deadline to do that. And for some reason Clark is, I mean, obviously he's in a bad spot, but goes and finds some random pastor to ask his opinion on it. And the guy really says nothing. He says like, take a leap of faith first and then, then the trust comes later. It's just like that's a 5-minute scene that we didn't need. It doesn't really pay off to anything later on. And I do know that like there's a lot of people that kind of there's like a religious allegory with like Superman and like Jesus and stuff, but it just doesn't work in this movie. And you could just cut that and like it makes the movie a tighter movie. So I really think that should be gone. The sirens are on my end if you're listening to this. So sorry about that. But another scene that really doesn't work is the scene directly after Superman kills Zod and snaps his neck. Is we have this scene where Superman feels bad because he's killed someone for the first time, and he's also killed someone from his own world. And the very next scene is Superman is like the government has these surveillance drones that are keeping tabs on him, and he like goes up to space, gets one of these drones, or goes up in the air, gets a drone, and he crashes this drone, and it lands and crashes like feet away from General Swanwick, who we haven't talked about much yet, and also from Captain Ferris. They're driving their car. It crashes right in front of him, so he's like putting people in danger, and it's just a petulant thing that Superman wouldn't do. Like Superman wouldn't do that, and then he gets there and the general's like, "Oh, you just destroyed a $12 million piece of property or whatever. That's what that cost $12 million." And Superman's like, "Well, don't, you're not going to find where I hang my cape." But then right after that, he tells him, he's like, "You should trust me. I grew up in Kansas." And it's like, everyone knows who you are. Like, you can't tell me the government doesn't know that Clark Kent is Superman. I mean, of all the stuff that Clark did in Smallville, from what happened in this movie when the Kryptonians attack Smallville and to attack one house specifically, everyone knows everyone is, but especially like General Swanwick, who works for the government, who later on becomes Martian Manhunter in Justice League, which is was not the plan when Man of Steel was being filmed, but became the plan later on. It like he doesn't like. Why do they need to put surveillance on him? They know who he is. They know where he is. Like he's in Metropolis. He's from Smallville. He lives in Kansas. Like it's all right there. Just that's a scene also. You could just cut that scene and that's another 5 minutes you're saving. And once again, you're getting rid of a thing that Superman wouldn't do. Superman wouldn't destroy that property just to kind of make it's kind of played like for as a joke because the way the scene ends is Captain Ferris, this younger woman, she's like smirking after Superman flies away after he talks to General Swanwick. And Swanwick noticed that she's smiling. He's like, "Why are you smiling?" And she's like, "I just think he's kind of hot." And it's played off as a joke. And I don't know, it just doesn't work. It's not good. It's just not good. Um, So that's another like un-Superman thing like that we could get rid of. I mentioned the Battle of Metropolis with the 18 wheeler where he like just jumps over it. Like, why would he do that? Superman would stop it. He wouldn't let a parking garage be exploded by an oil truck. Like it just doesn't work. Let me see some other stuff we could talk about. The oil rig scene in the movie I think is a cool scene where it shows he it's funny because he kind of looks like Wolverine. It's before he has his Superman costume and he's saving the guys on this oil rig. It's exploding and he's on fire and he really does like he's like wearing these shorts and he doesn't have a shirt on and he's got the beard. He does look like he looks like it could be like a if Hugh Jackman doesn't return as Wolverine, it looks like Henry Cavill could step in that role and they just keep on rolling. So I don't know if anybody else has ever noticed that, but it does seem like he could play a different character. But and that again, once again, that's one of those things where like, people can see his face. Now they don't know his name. At that point, he's going by this he's being called Joe, which is actually his middle name, Clark Joe Kent. But I don't know. There's just a lot of little things in this movie that kind of add up and you cut out a lot of stuff and you could make a really tight movie that tells a Superman story that still, you can make it different. You don't have to follow all the Superman tropes. But the problem with this movie is they wanted to make it different. But then they end up falling back on those tropes, but because they cut out other things of the tropes, like it doesn't really fit. And that's partially why I don't think, like Henry Cavill couldn't continue as Superman because of what happens with the character. The fact that they kind of sped through a lot of stuff. The fact that they killed Jimmy Olsen out of nowhere in BVS. The fact that Superman dies in BVS. The fact that Superman dies and Clark Kent dies, and we know that Clark Kent dies, and that's a weird thing because they have a funeral for Clark Kent, they have a funeral for Superman, so you can't really bring Clark back. So once again, the secret identity is a problem in this movie, and to me, it's like maybe they should just avoided the secret identity altogether and just tell this Superman story because a lot of people think that like Superman, like if a guy puts on glasses and does his hair differently, like no, nowadays people would be too smart to notice that, and maybe that's true, but they kind of did like they kind of did halfway, and it just doesn't work. It doesn't. It's like you kind of either go all the way or you just blaze a new trail, and they kind of were in the middle, and yeah, it's not good. It's not that's why this it's partially why this um this version of the character isn't continuing. And that's the sad thing is it should be. It should be because Henry Cavill is an excellent Superman. Like I said, physically he looks like Superman, and I feel like I think he probably wanted to play a more like Christopher Reeve version of the character. Not exactly the same, but I think there's part of those things that were in the Reeve movies that like could continue nowadays. They could update them and you could tell a great Superman story. I think that's what Henry Cavill wanted to do, and he didn't get a chance to. And that's unfortunate. So, yeah, something else about this movie, and it's funny because I'm kind of jumping around in this podcast, and that's kind of the way the movie is does also. I understand why they did it. They told his origin story by these like memories, and we go from like him being a 5-year-old in school to now he's on this like fishing boat, and then we jump all around throughout his history. And once you've seen the movie a couple of times, I think it's actually kind of a cool way to do it. It's definitely different, but the first time it's kind of disorienting. And if you don't like this movie the first time, I can see why you wouldn't want to watch it again. I can see why that might be a reason why you wouldn't want to watch it, because it is weird. Like you see Jonathan Kent die, but then 10 minutes later you see a flashback where he's alive, and like I don't know. And I mean you can tell it's a flashback because Clark is of different ages in the different scenes, but it just like I said, you see it a couple of times, it works. You see it, you know, the first time and you're like, man, I don't know. They really should just like done a linear story and just, hit the points and have him progress as a, as any character would. So that about does that. Let me see. Let's see. Talk about Easter eggs in this movie. I mentioned about Guardian. Obviously, that's a reference to another DC character. There's the LexCorp trucks. We see them in Smallville and Metropolis. Obviously, we get Lex in Batman v Superman. We also get a shot of the Wayne Industries satellite, which when Superman and Zod are fighting into space, they fly by the satellite, and it's a Wayne satellite, but it's the Dark Knight trilogy Wayne logo. So it kind of shows you back then, because this movie came out a year after The Dark Knight Rises, that maybe they had hoped to, maybe they wanted Christian Bale's Batman to be the Batman of this world, and they didn't really know where this story was going to go. And obviously, in fairness, like I mentioned that Man of Steel is the first movie of the DCEU, but it wasn't intended to be. Actually, Ryan Reynolds' Green Lantern, which came out in 2011, was kind of supposed to be the movie that kicked this off, but that movie obviously was a bomb and people hate it. I don't hate it as much as most people do, but it was deemed a failure pretty quickly, and they decided to kind of go, okay, sweep that under the rug. We're going to now go to Superman and let Superman be the way to start it. Which I agree, Superman should be the way to start it off your universe. Obviously, he's the oldest character. He's one of the most famous. I mean, he's right up there with Batman as far as the DC characters. But yeah, so they made a good choice to start with Superman. I just wish they could have. I wish it was a little bit better. That's really just it. I wish it was a little bit better. Um, another great line in the movie, because I feel like I've been kind of negative on Jonathan Kent, but I do like the scene whenever Clark learns that he's an alien, and Jonathan shows Clark, the spaceship that he arrived in. They've got it hidden in the barn, and the kid's obviously freaked out. He's like, "Can't I just keep pretending that I'm your son?" And then Jonathan Kent goes, You are my son." And then they hug each other. Like it's a nice emotional moment. It's I believe it's taken straight from a comic from Jeff Johns' Secret Origin, which I've read recently. It's a really great Superman comic. So if you're looking for something that I think tells a really good Superman origin story, check out Superman's Secret Origin. So that line is from this comic, but I really enjoyed that part of it. I think there's so much, like, that's the thing about these movies, like they have so much uh source material that they can draw upon, that you can kind of pick and choose the best stuff from different comic runs. And I think for the most part they do a good job with that. But I think this movie, I think they wanted to kind of go their own way, but they went halfway. So I feel like you need to go all the way, or there's a lot of stuff at your disposal, and just kind of pick and choose from that stuff, and go from there. Another thing that is interesting about this movie, I don't know that it's really a drawback for me, but there's no kryptonite in this movie. And that's kind of a first for a Superman movie. I think this is the only Superman movie that doesn't have a reference to kryptonite, doesn't have, you don't see kryptonite. And even like in BVS, like kryptonite's obviously in the movie and it plays a key role, but it's not. I feel like I mean, obviously you, if you've followed this stuff at all, you know what kryptonite is. It's obviously what hurts Superman, but it's his main weakness. But I don't feel like they introduce it great in this franchise. And I feel like there should have been something with kryptonite in this movie somehow. Maybe that's how they could try to, the humans figure out a way they can kind of just, stabilize the Kryptonians who are trying to invade. And then of course they have the problem with that is Superman's also Kryptonian, so it can hurt Superman. So, maybe that could have been something they could have played into. I don't know. That might have gone bad too. So I don't know. I'm not sure, but it's interesting. There's no kryptonite in this Superman movie. And I mentioned, I think the movie should be called Last Son of Krypton. I think that would be a better version, a better name for the movie, because it's so much about Krypton. It's so much about. I mean, you have the people who left from Krypton who are trying to recreate Krypton on Earth. Feels like you should have just gone with that title and then kept Man of Steel for a sequel. But they did what they did, so you can't really, it is what it is. We're moving on. Um, Speaking of moving on, so back when this movie came out, there was I mean, this movie has a ton of product placement in it, right? Like you see 7-Eleven, you see Sears, and Sears is like one of the is a big place in the movie. Um, s- so Sears, back when this movie came out, the Sears catalog at the time, my mom got this in the mail. If you're watching on the stream, you can see they they had a Superman themed comic book that, or it's a Man of Steel themed comic book that's a different Superman story that was released as a free item to go with the Sears catalog. Obviously, in the movie, Martha Kent works for Sears in Smallville. That is one of the places in Smallville that gets leveled by Nemec and Feora fighting with Superman. So I thought it was a kind of cool tie-in at the time. I made sure to hang on to it. I thought it was kind of a cool item. The comic, the storyline in the comic book, however, is just it's All Star Superman, so it has nothing to do with the movie, but the cover was kind of made in Man of Steel style. So I thought that was kind of a cool thing. Um, as I'm kind of wrapping up here, let's see. This movie, like I said, has really kind of risen in my eyes. And the DCU is coming to an end. So I think it's time for me to show my updated DCU rankings because this movie has been low on my list for a long time, but now it's now middle of the pack. It's in my top 5. So let me run them down, and I'd like to hear y'all's. If you got comments, if I want to hear what you think about my rankings. Let us know your rankings, like in the chat here or later on YouTube. Just drop them in the comment section. But so I'm gonna start from the top. My number one DCEU movie is the Snyder Cut, Zack Snyder's Justice League. I know it's a 4-hour movie. I know it's kind of not even a movie because it's so long, but I do enjoy it. I've seen it 6 or 7 times, which is crazy because that means I've spent, 30 hours or so with this movie, but I really enjoy it. I think it's honestly it's by far the best. To me, it's his best work with these characters, and if they could have skipped Man of Steel and Batman vs Superman, just gone to this movie, I would have been fine with that because it does a good job introducing most of the characters, and it's just awesome. I really enjoy it. My number 2 is the first Shazam movie. The first Shazam movie to me is basically an MCU movie trapped in the DCEU. It's it's just super fun. Really enjoyed it. My number 3 movie is the first Wonder Woman movie, which I think most people kind of think is usually the consensus is like the best movie in the DCEU. Um, I think it's really good. I think it's a solid movie. My number 4 is The Suicide Squad. That's The Suicide Squad, meaning James Gunn's version of The Suicide Squad. It's kind of a sequel to the original Suicide Squad movie. This movie came out in 2021. It did not do well the box office, but a lot of that was because of the pandemic. It went straight to HBO Max. That's where most of us watched it. That's where I watched it. This movie is a fun movie, really entertaining. It obviously introduced us to John Cena's Peacemaker, and for that reason, it should be high up in the list. But it's got so many different actors, different great characters, and it's just a fun watch. And so now I get to my number 5, which is Man of Steel, which is huge for me because forever I've always had Batman v Superman above Man of Steel. But I really think recently with these rewatches, I really think that this movie, um, you know, take away the Jonathan Kent tornado scene, and I think Man of Steel is better than BVS. And if you cut out some of the other stuff I talked about before, I think it's a much better movie. So I'll go with Man of Steel above BVS. Number 6, Batman vs Superman, Dawn of Justice. I honestly could talk about this movie for hours, so I'll just say it's my number 6 right now. Moving on to Wonder Woman 1984 at number 7. This movie was much maligned when it came out, Christmas of 2020. I don't think it's as bad as people say. I think people hated on it for like a weird reason. I think they hated it because it was a pandemic movie that was available for people to pick apart and from their homes, and they decided to pick this movie apart. But it's just a superhero movie, and if you like superhero movies, it's not terrible. There's far worse out there. There's far worse than this list. Um, I enjoyed it just fine. Moving on, the Aquaman movie, which is the only one of these movies that's made $1 billion in theaters. So for that, it has its own special place. But for me, it's number 8. My number 9 is the Justice League, which is the 2017 version, the Justice League. Um, directed by Joss Whedon, who all he did was like take Zack Snyder's movie and make it much, much worse. But there's still some cool stuff. There's some scenes in this movie that I still like. I like the end credit scene with Superman racing the Flash. That's a really cool scene, and it feels like what these characters should be doing. So that's that's number 9. My number 10 is Black Adam with The Rock. The hierarchy of the DC universe did not change when The Rock joined. However, I did like the action in the movie. There's a lot of great fights. And I think The Rock should have a place somewhere in the superhero world. And unfortunately, I don't think it's going to be the DC going forward. My number 11 movie is the latest or the most recent DC movie, which is Shazam! Fury of the Gods. This is really bad. I had higher hopes for this movie, although the trailers didn't give me much to look forward to. This movie bombed at the box office, and I don't know that we're going to see Zachary Levi as Shazam in the new DCU that starts in 2025. My number 12 is Suicide Squad, the original one. This movie had heavy studio interference from Warner Brothers. They basically had a movie, and then Guardians of the Galaxy came out and kind of changed everything. And they wanted to try to make their movie like Guardians of the Galaxy, which was, is a James Gunn movie. And they made this movie. It's basically like a 2-hour music video, and it's just really bad. I don't enjoy really any of it. And then that gets me to my last movie, which is the Birds of Prey, the Fantabulous Emancipation of Harley Quinn, I believe is the full title. This movie's god awful. This is bottom of the barrel. One of the worst superhero movies I've ever seen. I will never watch this movie again. We didn't review it with the Watchers when it first came out, and I don't think we'll ever review it. So maybe this is the last thing I'll ever say about this movie. It's just really bad. I would say don't waste your time with this movie. There are great people in the movie, but and great characters, but yeah, don't watch this movie. So that about does it for my DCEU list. Of course, the next DCU movie comes out this week. It's The Flash. It's my the most anticipated movie of the year for me. I'm going to see it multiple times, and I will have a review for you next Monday, or maybe before. We'll see. But I'm really excited about that. So let me know what you think about The Flash. Are you excited about that? Say that, leave that for us in the comments below. As I'm getting out of here, I want to say thanks to everybody who joined us in the chat. Looks like M Moves had a lot of comments, so we appreciate those comments. Thanks for joining us. And that's one of the best ways to join us and help us out is to comment in the chat, leave your comments below. We appreciate everybody who's watching us on YouTube. And hey, if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you hit the like button, hit the subscribe button also. That way, our shows just come right to you. You don't have to look for it. And you can also help us out in various other ways. Social media, obviously, we're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We're at Watchers Basement. And be sure to use the hashtag Watchers Basement when you're talking about us on social media. That way we can find out, we can retweet it, we can comment, share it, all that good stuff. And hey, if video isn't your thing, that's okay. We've got you covered. We've got audio podcast versions of every show. Those are available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. And hey, if you're listening to us on one of those platforms, be sure to give us a 5-star rating. That really helps us out. So So hey, listen to us, subscribe to us, watch us on YouTube, all that good stuff. So once again, thanks to Frank for joining me. So for Frank, I'm Justin saying thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time. Have a good night. Bye-bye.